All right. My first visit to Bulgaria. I'm delighted. I am really, really delighted to be um, hosted by the Focus project. I think it's a great change from helping shareholders make 0.001 more penny more on their dividends. To actually do something with the cultural heritage of Bulgaria is great. The timing is wonderful. I came on the 24th. So I've been learning about the Cyrillic alphabet and how it was invented and how it spread and all of that stuff. And then I get to see the graduation outside. The young students graduated from high school with Porsches and Bugattis, and I have no idea. I'm looking at these. They look too old to be high school students, and how did they happen to have a Lamborghini in the garage? Stuff like that. So it's been a good visit. Lovely, good food and so on. So the trajectory that he's talking about was in 1991, I was hired by IBM in the US, the IBM Consulting Group, to create a process and methodology to be used for Smalltalk and C++ projects. They had the regular ones and had all data flow diagrams and things. And because Smalltalk is so different and the way of thinking is so different, I slowly took over the entire methodology chart, right? Requirements, design, coding, testing, but not delivery, but also project management. So for me, it's a tapestry. When you have a tapestry, you've got the threads running this way and the threads running this way. No direction is more important than any other. No thread is more important. No color is more important. It's not like I love gold running in a vertical line. No, the tapestry is a whole tapestry. So when I look at an organization, I see the tapestry, right? Project management, I see the executives, I see programmers, testers, I see everybody. And they're all making a tapestry. So that tapestry is interesting to me. So I started interviewing teams to find out. My boss said, I said, I don't know anything about this. And she said, well, why don't you go and interview some projects and find out what works? We don't have any competing products, So she gave me unlimited airplane tickets around the world, and I would go and interview projects, and all I said is what worked or what didn't work, what would you keep, what are your priorities? And they told me stuff that made no sense. So basically back in 1991, 92, any project that was following a process was not delivering software, and like at the level of 100%. Any project that was delivering software had no process. They literally were like 2 to 6 people in the room, access to the users, showing what they were doing, like every month or two at the time was pretty fast. And that was it. Like, how are you going to write a methodology with that? So I started being a little bit of a science guy, trying to write, so why would that work? If someone said we do this and we don't do that, I go, why would that work? So I started making charts and graphs and like the theory of like why this all works. So one of these days I'll write a small book called A Small Theory of Software Development. But as you'll see from this talk, it's not just software development. It's in fact all collaborative mental activities, which is in fact most activities these days, except for physically, moving something from here to there. So this slide you see, it's called Heart of Agile, but it's really Teamwork 2.0. It's not about Agile. It's much bigger. It's not just about inside the team. It's teamwork, right? The work of teams, the team inside and also the delivery, round trip, the effect on the world. So this is now grown from this is what programmers do. When we wrote the Agile Manifesto in 2001, we were really talking about software. But about a year later, we looked at each other and go, this isn't really anything to do with software. This is really about generic, social, mental activities. But we couldn't, since 2003, we've been trying to get it outside of software. But everybody sees it as being part of software. So in 2015, I took the challenge and I made it simpler, but also more general. So all we ever talk about are decisions, people making decisions, and the flow of decisions. And now you have any initiative anywhere, churches, governments, organization, boiling water in Africa, recycling, solar. It doesn't matter because everybody's making decisions. And if we look at the flow of decisions, all those things the Agile guys talked about back then make sense. It's not like we do it because it's Agile. It's just, it makes sense. And the Agile guys kind of decoded that first, but now I've generalized it, and that's this talk. So it's everything to do with teamwork, right? And AI creeps into the story, of course, as it does with everything. So I just start with the AI. That's the current picture of AI. The key word for AI in 2026 is cognitive overload. So you look around and you find all the articles, people are talking about cognitive this, cognitive that, cognitive debt, cognitive apathy, which is like people don't like to think anymore. Cognitive load, like you can't figure out what it's doing. We can't keep up with it/them. A colleague of mine said, used frequencies, like people talk at a certain rate, at a certain frequency. And so the people receiving the work at a certain rate. So these people can generate decisions and work products at a certain rate, and these people can evaluate and use them at a certain rate, and they're kind of matched. You know, over the years, they kind of matched. Do this, check it, do this, check it. Suddenly, we have the generator going at 10,000 times the speed, or more like a million, but we'll just say 10,000. 10,000 times the speed, and now boom, and these people can't keep up. So there's a rate mismatch between generating output and evaluating output, whether it's using it or evaluating it. But I'll use evaluating it. So human cognition now is the limiting factor. It's now the bottleneck station in manufacturing parlance, or the limiting factor. But I like his use of a rate. There's a rate mismatch, and that's where we are. So that's like one of the short sentences, and I'll come up with the other short description later, but I saw this cartoon. I absolutely love it. It really summarizes AI these days. Like, you can generate it, but what did it do? What did it actually do? I don't know. Our job as the human is to find the mistake. So it goes, hey, give me this. Our job is to find the mistake. But now there's too much, right? So there's a rate mismatch. Anyway, we'll come back to that. I'll go back to the Agile story first. So in 2015, I had to take Agile out of software. So I had been referring to the Agile Manifesto. Then here I said, okay, it's not Agile Manifesto time anymore. It's just the word Agile. So the word Agile, like in the dictionary, means the ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease. Not a mystery. We all knew that word when we chose it. You guys already know that if you speak English. And that's what agility means. This was written in 2015. At that time, the cute phrase people threw around was VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Well, if it was all of that in 2015, it's more so now. Like, the world is getting faster, not slower. What that means is that everybody in the world has to get better at this thing. That's not a binary. We have to get better at moving and changing direction quickly and with ease. This is not an option, and this is every single person, every team, every company, every organization, everything, every industry, and of course AI just accentuates all of that. So I'll talk like I'm talking about Agile, but in fact, you'll see that Agile, what we called Agile for all those years, is a small subset of the things I'm going to talk about. So this will give you Agile, but it will give you more. It'll give you generically more effective teams, which is the part I care about, Agile being kind of nice. The Agile world, for those who are doing it, has a problem that all the Agile frameworks are too complex. Too many words, too many rituals, too complicated, full of software references, and really only limited in applicability to a small space. So we need something simpler. Like, if you go to Chile or Patagonia and you go to a village, you can't talk about Scrum Masters and, backlogs and project managers. You can't use any of that language. So we're looking for simpler language, easier to adopt, and it turns out more general, and it turns out easier to start with. And it's very simple, just these 4 words. So I've been living from these words since 2015, when I first drew this and I tested it out. And so you collaborate to deliver, you reflect to improve, and there is no more, right? So these 4 words. And people from the 90s who were doing Agile use these 4 words because nobody's reading the Agile Manifesto anymore. I mean, not only is it part of software, but it has complete sentences, you know, like verbs, direct objects, commas, and nobody's got time to read full sentences anymore. So it's 4 words: collaborate, deliver, reflect. If I could make it 3, I would, but it's 4. Sorry. Collaborate. Now, let's look at those words. These words are so fundamental that you never escape them. You will never, ever stop doing these 4 words. And I chose them as commands. They're imperatives. They're not nice values like in the manifesto. They're not principles. It's really like, do this. So collaborate. It's not called collaboration. It's collaborate. Like really, it's a command. Collaborate. Now, the thing about collaboration is it's pretty obvious. To the extent you collaborate better, things go better. To the extent you collaborate worse, things go worse. Like that's obvious. Like it's so obvious, like plain as the nose on your face. So why do I even have to say it? Answer is because nobody puts money on it. Where's the budget? So I go around the world trying to get executives to put budget on improving the quality of collaboration. So for close to 10 years now, I've had a challenge. Every company, any size, get a top-level budget line item for improving collaboration. Like that's a hard call, right? It's a hard request. If you don't have that, I don't believe you're putting any energy on it. If you don't have a budget for it, it's not happening. And I'm happy to say that one guy, a friend of mine, comes into my office one day and he says, I'm happy to tell you that I have a budget line item for increasing collaboration, and I can tell you the amount, and this was in 2017, it was $150,000, the sole purpose of which was to fly people between India and Australia and go out for restaurants, pub crawls, football games, whatever they needed to do, simply to get that kind of a bonding that you get from the social interaction. So he's the first person who had literally a budget line item for improving collaboration. Now I've seen this in other places. Big pharmaceuticals do it. I've heard that Accenture has it in their pricing formula. They have collaborative teamwork building budgets depending on how far away the people have to travel. So it's not impossible. And for startups, I go, you don't have big bosses getting in your way while you're still small. You're the president of the company or the founder. Right away, put in a budget line item for increasing collaboration. If you don't have a budget, ain't happening, right? So that's collaboration. Now, you'll never stop learning how to collaborate, right? Everybody knows how to collaborate. Anybody doesn't collaborate just because they don't want to, right? I don't like that person. They were mean to me. I sent an email. I sent 14 texts. This happened to me one time, and I was kind of complaining, and my colleague says, why don't you just walk down there and talk to her? And I'm thinking, no, I already sent all the emails. I was, and I hear my own little voice going in my head. You just don't want to. You already know how to collaborate. You just don't want to. So I had to walk down there and talk to her. So that's collaborate. Deliver. We'll dig into that pretty heavily. We're going to look at the flow of decisions and how to deliver to get feedback. We're interested in feedback, so we collaborate to deliver. Now you get the feedback. Now you have to stop, think about what you wanted, where you're going, how do you feel, and then improve things. So let's look at that for a minute. So this is like the basics, the basics, the basics. You never escape these 4 words, right? Forever. You just get deeper into them. So my colleague Sole Pinter, we were looking for a word that's not process. Everybody thinks if you have multiple words, it's a process, or thanks to Scrum, it's a framework. Do we have Scrum people in here? Anybody do Scrum in here? Of course, a lot. So why is Scrum a framework? Well, what is a framework anyway? Well, nobody knows what a framework is, but it's better than a process. So Scrum is not a process, it's a framework. We don't know what it is, but it's better. And it says less. So processes tell you what to do. Scrum sort of tells you what to do, but not much. And it's better, so it's a framework. So this is not a process, this is not a framework. So we were looking for ways to describe it. And she says it's like, for me it's a mandala. You get the Tibetan colors, you get the drippy colors, right? You put up the 4 words, you stare at it every morning, right? Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. That's me, that's the way I do it. But she's very practical. She goes, it's like a compass. Now the compass, you don't go like north, south, east, west, because that's a circle. You think about where you want to go, and you look at the compass, and using the compass, it helps decide you in which direction to advance. You use it to help you decide in which direction to advance. So she said the heart of Agile is a compass to decide in which directions to advance the conversations. So these are all conversations, they're not processes. So if we ask what conversations are these, we get this. So under collaboration, first thing you have to do is work on trust. You have to work on culture. You have to work on rewards. Are people rewarded for collaborating, or are they punished for collaborating, right? So if collaboration is not one of the top 2 things in the annual employee evaluation, they're not going to do it. Again, it's like put the money on it, put the energy on it, put the rewards on it. So that's rewards, so you have to do that. Culture, the culture of sharing, the culture of collaborating. Those of you who are in universities, you know it's really hard to collaborate in universities. The reward structure is all about individuals, right? Individual accomplishments. And that's not just in universities, it's in a lot of places. And then how can you build trust? And that's where the budget line item comes in. Lower fear, build trust, make it safe, right? There's things you can do at every level of the management hierarchy to make collaboration better. So it's a work of every day. It's a daily assignment. This at all levels of the organization by everybody. So that's why that gets number 1. Now we'll dig into deliver. We'll talk about the internal flow of decisions, delivering for value, delivering for feedback is actually really important these days. When we get to reflect, it means stop working on the project or the product and talk to each other. Think about why you're there. What are you aiming for? How do you feel? What's the data say? All the rest of it. And then you improve. These days we use the baby step, the micro improvement. I'll show you just a teeny bit of the micro improvement story. There, you improve everything in little steps. You don't make big jumps like that. Okay, so I'm going to show you this, and now, and then if you blow it out, there's no mind map because everything fits in there. We've tested it. Pretty much everything fits in there. So it's just interesting if you take any word, you go like, how does it attach? Here. So if you look at the top, I see silos right off the top. I see politics, rewards. I see this thing called guest leadership I'll talk about. Listen, allow failure. I see limit changes. I see skills development. I mean, all of these things slot into this picture somehow, right? So there are other talks I've given where I put the emphasis in different places. You could go on the internet and you can find some talk where I kind of went around this, especially around 2018. I was going very slowly around it all when I was explaining it. So for tonight, I want to dig in a little bit. And the big question on everybody's mind these days is how does AI fit into this? And in my last class, we literally went around this and asked yes, no, how much on every word on this particular slide. And the punchline is a little bit like you might expect just from the first glance. Delivery is covered. AI, you want output? Got it. Boom, the genie gives you output, whatever size you want. So the making of a thing is easy. That's done. In the reflection, if you've got data, it's very good at analyzing the data and giving you insights about the data. People are using it to analyze conversations on Slack and giving you data about the emotions, right? But after that, everything's human. Everything's human. So like in the collaboration, we can talk about collaboration in agents. We can talk about collaboration between agents and humans. But fundamentally, who takes the blame when the agent screws up? It's the human, right? The accountability still rests with the human. So the collaboration part, the culture part, the rewards part, all of that is human-based, the AI, as far as I know. But, check it. Just look at that. And as I go through the talk, just ask yourself, so what are the LLMs going to do to change that or to improve that or to damage that, as the case may be? But this was our first cut, right? Anything on the improving, that's human. Skills development, learning how to use A's right there. The introspection's human. You can use it to chat, but the introspection's human, collaboration's human, et cetera, et cetera. So AI chops up maybe a third of this picture, An important third, but still a third. All right, so I'll go on and you can just like double check in your mind as we go around. Collaboration is attitude. I'm going to go through quite a lot of ideas on the collaboration. That happens to be one of my favorite parts. And this one is super interesting. Back in the 1970s, one of the management gurus said that they were seeing a change in management philosophy in 1970s. That from the 1880s up through World War II, 1950s, the fundamental assumption was workers were lazy and stupid, and you had to tell them what to do and you had to push them and force them, right? So if you're shoveling coal and your boss comes up and goes, faster, faster, right? So of course, adrenaline, you go faster and you jump, and so it works. But if you're doing mental work and you're staring at your screen or your paper or whatever you're doing, and your boss comes up behind you and goes, faster, faster, right? You don't go faster, right? The amygdala kicks up, fear center, shuts down the prefrontal cortex, lose your concentration, everything. So you lose it. So mental work gets worse under pressure and with stress. So he was saying in the 1970s that he was seeing a change in philosophy, that the fundamental management foundational belief was that workers are actually motivated and intelligent, and you kind of let them make their decisions and you show them direction and you help them, with the skills development and so on. So that was a major, major shift, what I call from forcing, pushing, controlling to letting people choose, letting people pull, permitting people to do things, right? So that's that. And I'm going to look at that in the next slide, couple of slides. This guy is a friend, a guy I know, deep admiration, been CIO, CTO, C-something-O, COO of many companies, and he wrote some book. But he has a management matrix, so those of you old enough to know about consultants is all management consultants have a 2x2 matrix. That's their calling card, is a 2x2 matrix. And I can never understand 2x2 matrices, except I know you have to be in the upper right corner, always. You have to be in the upper, and you're always in the bottom left. You have to go to the upper right. So I took his 2x2 and I said, we're down there, we try to go up there. There's the bridge, and if you do it wrong, you fall off into one of the traps, right? That's all I know about his 2x2. But that's cool. His point is, if you really want good results, you have to get trust and ownership everywhere. And that was his calling card. He would go into an organization and try to arrange it that the people had some trust in each other and in him, and he had trust in them, and they knew it. And they had ownership of, guess what, of their decisions. They owned their decisions. And doing that way, they could move and be inventive and creative and go fast. Now, he also shows up in the next slide here because this is an interesting slide. Because I was doing this theory X, theory Y thing, and I said, in a public corporation, the stockholders don't care if you have a happy family or you have an ulcer. They just want the share prices to go up, right? And they don't care. So for the top executives of a corporation, it's terrible pressure, terrible. It's all theory X at the top. Stress level on the presidents and CEOs is brutal, 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 nasty. But they want good results. They need to have theory Y on the bottom. They need to have this clear mental space. That means necessarily that some manager has to be what I call the push-to-pull umbrella. Since I've ever been working, I've heard words like heat shield, shock absorber, right? A good manager protects the people below them. The problem is if they do a good job, the people below them don't know how much pressure they're absorbing. So it's actually a really tough job. So if you are such a manager, right, I see you, that happens. If you have a nice, quiet life, look up, somebody's protecting you. It's really tough, really tough. So my man, Neil Nicolaisen, went into an organization, terrible morale, micromanagement from the top. They said the programmers are useless and worthless, just outsource everything because we don't care, these guys can't do anything. He came in, put trust and ownership everywhere, converted the entire culture, and they were working fabulously. And I said, man, you did it. I never saw anybody change a culture, and you did it. And he said, no, I have bad news for you. I was there for 3 years. When I left, the instant I left, those guys came down and started and 6 months later, the morale was as bad as the day I came in, right? So this is the problem of transformation, is it's very sensitive, but this is the story of that push to pull umbrella, by a guy who knew exactly what he was doing. So that's that. And now I'm going to introduce this thing with autocratic leadership and guest leadership, so that gets us to the leadership part of the discussion. There are all these books out, and I'm starting now to study leadership a bit, because there are a lot of ideas. They're very, very similar. We've got lateral leadership, host leadership, guest leadership, situational leadership, spontaneously leadership, every other kind of leadership you can imagine, and they're all pretty similar. I just want to highlight two of them, and this one is a great book called Host, about being the host at a party. So Mark McCairgow and Helen Bailey deconstructed what it is like to be the host at a party and mapped that to leadership. Now, in fact, it's more maps to being a manager. Because when you get promoted to be a manager, you don't get to choose your team. You don't get to choose your direction you're given. This is your assignment. This is your team. Ready, set, go. Right? So that ends up looking a lot like being the host of a party where you didn't get to invite the guests, but there you are, He has the normal kind of host things you can read, that sequence, that's kind of normal, the vertical. I didn't get much out of that. It was nice. It's cataloged. The 4 circles were the ones that interested me, because I hadn't seen that breakdown ever before. He said sometimes at the host of a party, you're with the guests, you're introducing people to each other, whatever, like that. Sometimes you go and you say in the spotlight, hey, everybody, there's a car parked, it's about to be towed, or hey, the dessert's being served, or hey, whatever. You do some announcement, move to the other room for the brandy, or whatever you say, right? So in the spotlight. Sometimes you're in the kitchen, slicing the bread, or getting the wine out, or whatever. And sometimes you're the one that was a surprise to me, in the gallery, and there's a picture of them up on a balcony looking at the crowd. And if you're the host of a party, there's times and the manager, you're not doing anything, you're just assessing, where do we need more attention, right? You're just looking like that. So that was super cool, and I recommend anybody who becomes a new manager, get these 28-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 30-year-olds, suddenly become a manager. They go, what do I do? I said, get this book. It's that good. But I'm a bit of an anarchist, and I don't like to have a boss, and I don't like to be a boss. And when I have a party, I kind of expect the people to bring the party. So I might be cheap, but I get a block of cheese, bread, a bottle of wine. I have a sound system and a fire pit. And somebody comes and brings the DJ equipment with the lights, and somebody comes and brings too much food, and somebody has a playlist, and somebody likes to play with fire. So everybody's so these are the guests, are doing leadership things. But when I look around, that happens everywhere. Like at any party, someone says, hey, we're out of beer. I'm going to make a beer run. Who wants what? Oh, I want some wine. I need chips. We need some more Coke, blah, blah, ice. A couple of people jump in a car. They go shopping. That person is a leader, and they were not the host. So they were a guest who became a leader. So I got fascinated by this topic of guest leadership. So these are people who step out of their role. They have no anointed authority, and they do something because they think it's interesting to do or because it's necessary. So I call this guest leaders. And you can find this everywhere in society, all around you, anywhere. So for example, one sec. Open water here. No, I don't. I'll drink this one. I just caught this. There are news clips all the time. This one was in Brazil. Some family was having trouble in the ocean. Somebody, not the lifeguard, because the lifeguard has a motorized thing and goes and gets them. You don't get this story. Somebody organized, motivated the human chain, and they had 80 people in a human chain to pull the people back, right? That was not the lifeguard. Who was that person? We don't know. But that's an example of guest leadership. So I'm fascinated by that, studying it, what companies have it, how much, how can you encourage it? Is it good? Obviously, it only happens in corporations with trust and ownership everywhere, where there's trust that somebody can make a decision and do an action. So they're connected with Neil Nicolassens. But I have to keep going. I'm going to be looking, there's ways, cards to help collaboration, but I'm also looking at the time because I want to spend energy on the decision part. So my model for an organization is like a giant brain, where the people, the humans, are the neurons, agents, of course. And the odd thing about humans is they have legs, and they kind of wander off in the middle of the computation. They go to paternity leave, maternity leave, vacation, lunch, business trip, whatever, and they come back, and the brain has been continuing this calculation thing, and they have to catch up. And that's why Agile people put sticky notes on the wall all around them, is to externalize the calculation. What are we trying to do and where are we? So people can walk into the room and build a common understanding of what are we trying to do and where are we? Yeah, so you see how this kind of way of speaking about things kind of explains why the Agile people, they didn't know that why they did it. They just did it because, you know, it worked, but I'm now explaining why that works. Now, what is the computation that they're doing? Well, somebody has a bright idea, and this works, by the way, in social impact projects. I like the example that I heard about, that somebody had the bright idea that the people in Africa didn't have enough houses, so they made houses out of styrofoam, and they dropped them out of helicopters and then let the people live in them. Well, the problem is styrofoam houses in Africa are just freaky hot, and nobody would use them. So they made a set of decisions, and these decisions had errors. I'm going to come back to this because somebody has an idea. They think they know how the world works. It's what I call the theory of the world or model of the world. And they go, the world works like this. I want this outcome. This outcome is people buy my product or recycle or boil water or whatever, have houses. I think if we did a thing and we dropped a thing into the world, then amongst the many ripple consequences of what happens, one of them is the one I want. That they buy my product or recycle or boil water or whatever. I want you to see how error prone that is, right? There's a lot of if inside of there. So, but what's happening in his brain is this person says, you know, our strategic project needs to be boom. And it already has a couple of decisions in it. And as you see there, people make errors in 1-5 the decision. So there's already an error in the first sentence they speak, but we don't know where. And now the game is called find the error. Right, so they say blah, 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 blah to the next person. They get 3 people, 5 people, 10, 20, 100, 200, 500 people, all making decisions, all of them having a different idea as to how the world works. They all have a different idea as to what would be a good thing to drop into the world. They all have a different idea of how to build the thing that they're going to drop into the world. And so this brain with the people, and now the agents, is trying to calculate, unify all these different views of how does the world work and how are we going to drop something in, how do we build it. So that's what's happening with the people going in and out. So that's my model for all organizations, anywhere in the world, any project. And it gets us into the language of decisions and decision feedback and find the error. But we'll find the error in what? What are the consequences of dropping something in the world? What are we dropping into the world? How do we build the thing that we're dropping into the world? Those are the questions we're trying to answer with this giant brain. So I've got here a thing that's supposed to look like a car manufacturing plant, but actually is a software organization or some kind of collaborative mental work organization. And each one of those pyramids is a decision. So if we look at Detroit, let's say in the 1960s, they had the idea that car parts inside the factory cost nothing. They're free. Internal inventory is free. Somebody will buy the car anyway. They have to keep this one machine that's stamping the shape of the hood busy because it's the most expensive machine. It takes weeks to change. They're going to keep that thing busy, and they can have bumpers and doors anywhere. It didn't matter. Over in Japan, after the World War II, they didn't have any money for internal inventory. They had to learn how to work with a single piece flow or small batch sizes as they call it. It turns out that this is pretty bad at many things. For example, a movie comes out, the hero is driving a different kind of car, and now the factory can't build that other kind of car, the other model, because they're filled with car parts. Over here in Japan, the same thing happens, but it doesn't take them long to shift the factory over to build a different kind of car. And in fact, in Toyota, they very specifically learned how to take it from a couple of weeks to a couple of hours, and they forced them to change models all the time. They want them to stay that way. I mean, it looks agile, but it's them just being efficient. Well, what about mental work? Like obviously software, but not only software. People show up with a requirements document 300 pages long. If we take a look at that, that's like 50 decisions per page. 300 pages is 15,000 decisions. Put an error 1 in 10. We have 1,500 errors in there. And you can't tell where they are. By definition, it's just words. Find the error. You can't. You stare at it all you want. You can't find them. Right? So we're going to, but let's just take a look at the batch flow. Take these 15,000 decisions, drop them into the various working teams. They all start adding decisions. This is like in Detroit, where you have a big pallet of parts and you like, boom, drop it over there. And each of these people add, and then somebody, testers or somebody is going to do something, integrate the software. They're going to find thousands of errors. They throw thousands of errors or hundreds back on the developers. The developers suddenly have got hundreds of errors and a pile of new work, and they go, how am I supposed to prioritize my time, right? So organizations have been working like this since forever, and they think this big batch transfer is efficient or natural, but I want you to see it's really, really bad in all dimensions. There is actually like no net savings out of this. And the worst part is you can't tell when anything's going to come out. You've got this little pyramid here, but it's got to go through there, get the red thing, you go back in the red thing in the different places, get fixed and go back. When is it going to come out? You can't say. So it's got all bad properties, and you can't change. And the world changes, and now you need something different, but you have all these decisions like half made. You can't delete 10,000 decisions and have a viable product. You're stuck, right? So there's that. So this is why the Agile crowd works with user stories. What we're looking for is what is the fewest number of decisions we can request from the business side to have breaks that into the tiniest little bits, have the developers of whatever the specialty is, make the fewest decisions, integrate them, do the fixes of the few decisions, put it in the world, find the mistake, and guess what? Fix it before you take on the next batch. So it looks like rework, but it's very efficient because you find the mistake early and in small batches. That gives you the most time and the least expensive fixes possible. Whereas if you do this, you get late discovery of errors, very expensive rework. I'll get to that graph in a moment. This is just looking at the flow. So this is why the Agile people work this way. We're looking to do this in every industry, in every situation. What is the fewest number of decisions we can have in flow, correct them, put them out, get feedback, and then build on top of it. So this is the knowledge graph. And this is what happens with the big batch. So again, from software, people used to write 100,000 lines of code for 2 years, throw it into the test department, they'd smash it all together, and then they'd have, 10,000 errors or something like that. But then the problem is you have to find each error in this code base of a couple of 100,000 lines of code. Terrible and slow. And you will never know when you're going to be done. You never know if you've got the last bug. You can't know. And that's a real problem. So the antidote, again, not only the Agile people, but really this code was cracked by the group Lean Startup, 2012. About 2012, a couple of books came out called Lean Startup, and it kicked off a whole new way of thinking about business where the goal is to find the bad news early using really, really interesting techniques. The game is to try to spot, now there's no science for this, this is really art, creativity, luck, experience. Where would you spend energy to test if something is going to work or not? I'll give you an example in a moment. But the art is to try to get the knowledge curve to go up, to learn about these 4 things. What's the business model? What will people use? What will they pay for? What's the UI like? On the technical side, let's talk about security, scaling, performance, compatibility, all those things. My favorite topic, social. Did we have the right people? But how can we help people learn to work better together? That takes time. You do very specific things that cost money, and back on budget again, cost money so people learn to work better again. And the Agile people hate talking about cost and budget, but you have to know, will we get it done by Black Friday? Will we get it done by the Olympics? Will we get it done by government mandated deadline? There are hard deadlines. If you have a hard deadline, this is the only game in town. This is the only way to work. So in the early stages, you're doing things to learn where are we wrong, reduce risk, then you build value, and then you get this marvelous section at the end I call the tail. So there's a period where you're paying to learn and a period where you're building business value, but you very deliberately leave little things out till the end so that when you run out of time or budget, and I always assume we run out of time or budget, you can cut back and you have the best you can have for that amount of energy. So when I look at projects, the red is more a learning but not so much value. So you go value, learning, value, value. And now at this point you really are going into the tail and you're really trying to find what's the basic we could deliver in case all bad news happens. We have something we can use. Good, get that safe. Now add till we run out of time or budget, right? That's kind of an art form, and this was created by Jeff Patton. That was his way of working, and I tell you, he had to hit me around the head with a stick for about a year and a half before I understood it. And then I said, oh, I do that in my private life where I'm limited on funds. I never thought to do it in corporations where I'm just an employee. So now I had to learn to apply it in corporate. Here's the one I like so much. I'll just read this to you. It's a screen snapshot from Twitter, from my phone, literally screen snapshot. Brian, your next automated pizza delivery is scheduled for Saturday, February 25th. To confirm, text yes. To decline, text no. And this guy, he has to be a tester, writes, thank you, Papa John, you handsome man. I shall call you the Carbs Vixen. We're sorry, we didn't understand. Please confirm or decline. When I make love, I imagine you tossing some dough shirtless. Dude, our automated system isn't set up yet. This is a real person. I make minimum wage. Please just tell me if you want the pizza. Right? So imagine you put all the money in this automated expert system, and this was like pre-AI, and you get a customer like this. Like I said, it's obvious a tester, right? But you do that early, and they all do that early. DoorDash did that early, right? Papa John did that earlier. They have a human there because it's cheaper to pay for a human to deal with weirdos like this. And you get to find out just how weird people are going to be before you go spend the money. So this is like early discovery of bad news, right? Can imagine a normal group would say, hey, we want an expert system, blah, 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 deploy it, right? Apparently Wendy's tried that and they deployed it. And then people did such weird things at the microphone that they had to pull it back again, like catastrophe, PR nightmare for Wendy's. Okay, so then you have to reflect and pause, check all that stuff. I just want to show you the micro improvement thing. We borrow this from a field of psychology, psychotherapy called solution-focused psychotherapy, and it's gone into coaching, so they do solution-focused coaching. And the strange thing with solution-focused therapy and coaching is you never talk about the solution. That's weird. But that's the way it's evolved, and you're not allowed to talk about the problem or the solution. Weird stuff. And the way it goes is like this. First of all, what would you really like? What are your best hopes? And you do that not because you're going to get there, but you want a kind of a direction. And then you say, okay, on a scale of nothing to 10, where nothing means you're dead or fired or quit, so you're not going to be at nothing. where are you? And so people go, oh, it's not really very good. It's like a 3 or a 4. And then they say, oh, well, a 3 or a 4 means that something is sort of working somewhere. And the example from the book that I was reading is the auditors come to manufacturing, big problems everywhere. And so the solutions focus guy says, has anybody had a not horrible interaction with an auditor? And someone says, yeah, the last time we did this and it wasn't bad. Then they say, everybody try that. Just do that. So the next time the auditors come, everybody's trying that. And of course, they all do it a little differently. Then they meet afterwards and said, how was that? And someone said, well, that wasn't too bad. I did this, da-da-da-da. Now you have a small library of things to try next time. So you go from a 1 or a 2 to a 2.5. 2.5 to a 3. As you get more things, you're not asking for anybody to specifically change stuff. You've got something that sort of semi-works a little bit, and you just kind of amplify it. So that's the first thing they do. So they say, well, you've got some assets, I call them assets, some things that already work. Do more of what's already working. And then the magic part with this is you never jump steps. You go from 3 to 4, never 3 to 6, never 4 to 8, 3 to 3.5, 3 to 4. You just do that and you find something that works a little bit, then you do that again and again and again. This turns out to work out super duper well with the heart of Agile because you could put the X, I'll show it to you in a minute, but I want to just finish this first. So there's the 3 things. Build on what's already there, visualize or describe what better looks like, and then just do something to advance just 1 point, never more. So the cool thing about this is you can apply this to absolutely any topic. Absolutely any topic. And what this guy does, I've got a couple of people who do this now. One of them is Jerry Dermier and this other guy, David Koss. And David Koss put this on Twitter, and I put all the words out of focus because I wasn't there. I can't do that for his team. But they put up an X and they say, collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. Tell us whatever's on your mind. And the group goes, Post-it notes. And then Jerry in particular likes to go, okay, which one of those do you want to work on? And they pick a note. And he says, okay, on a scale of nothing to 10, where are you? Boom, off and running, right? Any topic. Collaboration's not good. We don't like delivery. We don't trust each other. Could be anything, anything. We don't have skills for AI. Could be anything, anything, anything. And you do the micro improvement game. So his entire consulting, the guy is super smart. He reads everything. He knows everything. His entire consulting is put up the heart of Agile 4 words, pick topics, do solution focus, micro improvements on it, end. That's what he does. It's his whole life these days. And he's worked through entire organizations. I've met 2 organizations doing this so far. That gets us about to the end, and we're back to the AI question. So, I said, as I go through that, think about where your LLM is going to change something significant. And there's that, just that. The last thing I want to end with is my current thinking model for the LLMs is like a very smart high school student with fast fingers, right? The point about a high school student is you never really know what they're going to do. They could be diligent, they could be lazy, they could be fantastic, they could do anything. They could steal from the other house because it's faster to do that than it is to go to the store or build whatever they're supposed to. You never know, you never know. But if you have a swarm of agents, here's the bad news. You have 30 high school students, right? You're the boss, you fire up 30 agents. How are you going to organize 30 high school students to go and do anything, right? And so you have them check on each other, right? You have this one doing and this one watching them and this one adjudicating. You have little triads of agents going around trying to get stuff done. But some are climbing through a hole in the fence, and some are overriding the work of other ones, and some are stealing the goods from the neighbor's house instead of building or buying it, right? You don't know. But that's not yet the bad news. The bad news is because agents have no memory, and you have to lay stuff down in files, you get a fresh batch of 30 high school students every day. Fresh, new batch of 30 high school students. And did you write down the right stuff in the files that's going to keep them on track and not robbing the house or going through the hole in the... Maybe they'll do good. I don't know. They're sure fast. So that's my model of this. And in the software world, we're seeing people using all the old software engineering tricks. Regression tests, micro improvements, domain-driven design, bounded context, hexagonal architecture, nano-incremental development, all the things we've written about for 30 plus years are now suddenly, they're good at stuff that humans aren't good at. They also do stuff that's weird. By the way, I have been recently cataloging humans making crazy errors that we would call a hallucination on an LLM, and in a human we just blink and go, oh, a little miscommunication. Right? So, for example, we did the Carpaccio exercise, and these guys want to do test-driven development, and at the end, the guy said he spent the entire time trying to figure out how to test TDD writing to the console. Like, why would you spend the entire 40 minutes learning how to TDD writing to the console? That's not the problem. We've got this thing we're trying to solve. And the other one was doing hexagonal architecture, and this person goes, but it looks like you're testing the app. We go, yeah. But I was testing the adapter. We go, why would you do that? We're writing an app, test the app. And I just had this feeling like I was talking to an LLM, you know, and it had tested the adapter. It was beautiful. I'm sure it was beautiful testing of the adapter. I don't care about testing of the adapter. So I'm collecting the aberrations that humans do. We just blink over them like, oh, miscommunication, fix it up. But when the LLM does it, we go, oh, nasty LLM hallucinating, right? So this is my model. I'm just trying to, like everybody, just trying to come to terms with it. I pay attention. I do a little bit myself. I talk to people who are doing experiments. You know, I read all the stuff. Yeah, so that's what I've got. My friend Dennis Stevens says, the problem is the people are using it. They're not changing synapses in their brain or the relationship with each other or with the problem. And so he wants to see people using AI. Yes, it generates output, but did it change you and did it change your relationship to people or the problem? So I've got that. That's about the end. I wrote a lot of books, the most recent ones in the last couple of years. This is the Slice the Problem, Grow the Solution is the latest one, a couple of weeks old. And that's about this slicing, growing thing. Hexagonal architecture is a couple of years old. And I just barely produced this thing, Simplifying Software Design Using the Genius of Bureaucracies, which is like clickbait, but it works. And you can literally ask your LLM to pretend it's a bureaucrat doing a bureaucracy analysis, and it does a pretty good job of it. So that's it. That's all I've got. And it's 8, but we got a bit of a late start. So I'm curious, you guys must have questions. I want to give you a chance to ask some questions. So like maybe another 15 minutes, if you want to stick around, I'll answer questions. We have a microphone that's live, I can tell.
So first, let's thank Alistair. It was an amazing lecture. Thank you very much.